Inside the X is a short newsletter every Friday designed to give you some fun right before the weekend. It'll include links to blog posts, articles, books, quotes, and recent purchases I've made. Everything is handpicked to add value to your life. To join, email entertainmentxpodcast@gmail.com.
Good morning, Vietnam!
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
To infinity and beyond!
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
It's classified.
You talking to me?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
I can't fly!
Expecto Patronum!
Entertainment X.
You never know what you're gonna get.
For this episode, I sit down with Sara Wordsworth and we talk everything from Disney to In Transit to how she goes about writing scripts and librettos and books for shows. It's a wonderful conversation about so much. She also talks about the mind and head space that she keeps herself in when she goes through writing. We cover a bunch of topics, so many we actually didn't even get to all the questions. It was a really wonderful conversation, and I hope you enjoy. So keep on keeping on. We're back with another episode of Entertainment X, and today with me is Sara Wordsworth. Sara, thank you for sitting down with me today.
I'm so thrilled to sit down with you today. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for having me. We're going through the decorations here in this lovely abode. We'll get to it. We'll talk. We got a lot to cover. I want to start with Wordsworth, your last name. That's so fitting for what you do.
Thank you. It's real. Everybody always asks me if
That's where I was going with it.
If I made it up, if I adopted that name for myself. But I did marry into it, so I was very lucky because I met a guy who happened to be named Jim Wordsworth. And I was like, whoa, who would change? who would keep your maiden name with that option?
Right.
If you're a writer. So that was just lucky.
Where did you guys meet?
Jim and I met in the fall of 2002 at Chelsea Studios, which is why our daughter is named Chelsea.
Oh my goodness.
And now we live in Chelsea, which is a whole other level. We didn't live in Chelsea when we had her, so now we're those people who
Oh my goodness. What were you
have a kid named Chelsea in Chelsea. I know it's weird.
No, it's perfect. What's the what were you working on there?
So he was the assistant manager of Chelsea Studios for years. He's also in the arts. He's also a performer and a singer and a voice teacher, but that was his day job at the time. And I was, as an actor, doing a new show for Theater Works written by Kristen Anderson Lopez and James Allen Ford, both collaborators on In Transit. And they wrote, wait for it, an a cappella musical for Theater Works USA.
No.
And I was in the cast of that. And it was Theater Works' foray into the high school market. And so there were 6 of us, and we did this wacky a cappella thing for high schoolers that was called Condensed Classics, but then I think they changed the title to The Telltale Heart and Other Classics. It had an all-star cast at the time. Yeah, it's great. It was super fun.
Yeah, no, I believe
it. Super fun.
I've seen some of them, and I've auditioned for some of them, and they're fun shows.
Oh, I've been on tour with Theater Works, also as an actor.
Yeah.
You may have seen me play Mrs. Cratchit in
What
A
theaters?
Christmas
What
Carol.
cities?
No. But what's really hilarious about that was that I played opposite John Lloyd Young. He was Mr. Cratchit at the time. This is pre-Jersey Boys. So if you just stay in New York long enough,
you'll eventually cross paths
with everybody,
everyone.
and you've all done a Theater Works tour.
It all comes back to Theater Works and Disney.
Yes.
Which is where we met.
We were
working on a refresh of a musical there on the fantasy. And so I want to talk about, instead of like getting into that, I'm curious, when you work on refreshing any show, but keeping it in line with characters and what have you, where do you operate from when you do that? Do you like read all the books, watch the movies? Is it?
Yeah, definitely. So I actually love adapting, and I know as a writer, it's not everyone's bag, but I love taking an existing thing. I especially love taking an existing movie because I feel like it's such a different art form that operates in close-ups a lot, which you can't do on stage. So
Yeah.
I love what is the translation of that to the stage? What is the translation of something that's not musical to becoming musical? But always I go to the text first. I do an enormous amount of research about the property that I'm adapting. And I love to see not just the lines on the page, but I love to look at the original stage directions that are in either the screenplay or the script to see what the writer intended in that, and try to get little gems. from that. But I start with the text.
I always find it so fascinating, particularly with cruise line shows, that they're short.
Right.
So you got to get a lot of stuff in there real quick.
That's right.
And it's almost like, and forgive me, I don't mean to make a comparison here, but I just, in my mind, I have to. It's like a screenplay. There's less lines in a screenplay because it's a visual. That's a visual medium. But when you're having a short cruise line show, every line needs to have something important, or it's got to go.
Right. I mean, writing under any sort of time limit is a skill in itself. I do this a lot with children's theater. They'll say, make it about an hour. Stories are hard to tell in an hour or less. But so what you do is you distill it down to the main beats, the themes. When I'm dealing with something for Disney, there are iconic moments, iconic pieces of music, iconic lines, especially with a thing like Frozen, which I adapted for the Disney Wonder. And so I also am operating from a point at looking at what is my 5-year-old going to be upset about if it's not in the show. What is she going to say? But she never said, the sky's awake, so I'm awake.
Right.
So I really try to come to it from that angle when I condense it. If you follow the beats of the story and what is essential, if you start from there, then it makes your life a little easier.
It
does.
does.
It's hard to.
I have a technical question for you.
Yes.
It is hard. I have a technical question for you. So with for instance, like Frozen, we'll chat about this. They got to keep the songs, and the songs stay generally the same original length.
Sure.
So you're really working with, like, I don't know, 40 minutes of time to speak, like the scenes.
Trickiness, yeah. But with I adapted both Frozen and a new version of Beauty and the Beast for Disney Cruise Line. You do keep the songs, but it's kind of like a aural, A-U-R-A, aural trick. Like you make it sound like you haven't missed anything.
Yeah.
But and you remember this from Aladdin. I shove little lines in the spaces.
Yeah.
To maybe replace an entire verse.
Yeah.
So I'm taking
scene in a song.
Exactly. So
Smart.
I'm taking a song, and if the song itself is running very long or longer than we can, handle with our time limit, I will look for, well, if I cut this verse, where else can I put the dramatic content? Or where can I fool the ear so that you hear the iconic line in it? So I have a lot of fun doing that, and I'm frankly shocked that Disney lets me. It's like so fun that I get to take these songs
Coveted.
that I know and love, and really think about them in a structural way to make you think you haven't missed a thing.
Yeah.
That's always what I set out to do.
Have you ever, in your journeys of working through Disney and the company, come across like the originals who've worked on like the animated films and whatnot, or like Alan Menken or anything? Do you ever run into them? Do they ever like see any of the stuff you're working on, or you like chat and be like, what did you intend with this? Like,
with
get
Frozen,
to have a creative conversation.
and I'm also very fortunate because I'm very dear friends with Kristen and Bobby Lopez that we were able to talk a lot. And if I had, I could text them a question about, hey, what did you mean by this line? Which was great. That was a gift. But for some of the other things I'm working on, no, because they're, besides the fact that they're very busy, all these different divisions of Disney, all kinds of content is simultaneously being created. So while often the original creators have approval over what we're doing, it's not like I'm sitting in a room with them saying, hey, if I cut this line, what do you think? But there are many levels of approval.
Yeah.
So you just have to be ready to make edits.
Interesting.
But I would love to have some coffee with Alan Menken. So Alan, if you're listening, call me.
She's got a lovely apartment. Come on over.
Love Alan Menken.
Oh yeah. Okay, so let's rewind here. What were your childhood dreams growing up?
My childhood dreams, it's so funny because I wanted to be on Broadway. I wanted to be in entertainment. I wanted to sing and dance and act and be paid for it. At some point, I started writing a lot as a child. And weirdly, I would watch 80s sitcoms and then like go in my room and write a script for it. So then I would watch the credits roll and I'd be like, what does an executive script consultant do? I'll be that. So I think in like third grade, I was like, I might be an executive script consultant. I have no idea what that even was. But the strange thing in my life now is that if I could have invented the perfect job for me, I think this would be it. But I didn't know it existed as a kid. You know, it's sort of like happened to me.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have known to ask for, well, I'd like to adapt Disney's. I mean, I'm a huge Disney fan.
Yeah.
Huge fan. Grew up going to the parks a couple times a year. Love it. My whole family loves it. So it's been the joy of my life to get to work for Disney. And Broadway is the other artistic joy of my life. So the fact that I get to make Broadway quality shows for Disney, for theater at Disney is kind of like this crazy dream come true.
Yeah,
I feel very lucky.
Yeah, I believe.
I'm very, very grateful.
That's like, I mean, that's not a job you'd apply for.
No, and it's not a job that you go to
don't apply for
college
that.
and say, what I want to do is this. But in fact, writing musicals wasn't a job that I knew I could have because there, you know, when I was growing up, old men write musicals, old British men write musicals.
Right,
You know, like Andrew Lloyd Webber writes musicals, not a girl from New Jersey. So it wasn't anything that I had as a goal.
Why did you start writing?
Writing musicals?
No, like at the beginning with the sitcom.
Oh, at the beginning?
Like, what was the 80s sitcom thing?
I had to write.
Something to do.
Came to me.
Yeah.
No, it's just if you're a writer, you just write.
Yeah.
You know, like I just wanted to give characters things to say.
Wow.
You know, I just wanted to write dialogue. I don't know. And then I started writing lyrics. I really got into, this will reveal my age, which is fine. Not that young. I got really into the pop singers of the 80s, like Debbie Gibson. Oh, I was all about Debbie Gibson. And she was writing her own stuff at the piano. You know, like she was singer-songwriter. And there weren't a lot of those kicking around, young teenage girl writing her own songs. And I was just so taken with her. And so I sat down at the piano and started writing my own songs. They weren't that good.
Would you start with lyrics?
No, I would write lyrics and music at the same time. I'm also not that skilled of a pianist. I'm a very good musician, but I got really mad at left hand, at bass clef.
Yeah.
And I didn't practice that much to my mother's chagrin. My mom was a music teacher. So I had to write everything in the key of C.
Okay.
And I still do. And then I'm like, let's change this now. Let me
someone
hand
else
this to someone to change this out of C. But I was just writing these pop songs in junior high and in high school.
Were you using the like C major, G major, A minor,
Oh yeah,
F,
just
like
sit
that
at the
chord
piano, you know, on a wing and a prayer, just writing down some chords, writing some lyrics, angsty stuff. And then, but I never thought, oh, I want to write a musical. You know, it was like theater was the thing I did as an actor. You know, I just never put it all together in that way. Mm-hmm. And you know, I took like some playwriting courses, things like that in college. But soon after college, I just happened upon this group of friends, Kristen Anderson Lopez being one of them. She was Kristen Anderson at the time. And she had started writing. She was an actress like me, you know, but had always sort of done writing on the side. And she was at the beginning of her writing career. She had joined the BMI Musical Theater Writers Workshop. And I started going to the workshop with her as a performer, singing her stuff. And I was like, I think I belong here. I think I can write. Yeah. So really, I really feel strongly, especially for women, that you have to see it to be it. So I feel very fortunate that I was watching Kristen break down a lot of barriers as a young female musical theater songwriter. And I thought, oh, I would like to do that too.
That's cool.
So that's sort of like in the early 2000s is when it all kind of came together for me in that way.
When did you guys, so I guess it was the early 2000s, but okay, when did you guys start to collaborate? When did you decide like, hey, let's do something together? Yeah,
so I actually met Kristen because I had joined an a cappella group. When I first got out of college, I went to Fordham University at Lincoln Center here in Manhattan, and I got out of school without a dime to my name and nowhere to live, nowhere to go. And I was like, I'm
understand
here. And had to figure out where I was going to live and how I was going to support myself and pursue my performing career. And I took a job as a live-in nanny for the president of Columbia University Teachers College. Mostly because I was very, frankly, afraid to live on my own in the places I could afford to live, which were pretty far from Midtown Manhattan. And I was just not in a place where I felt comfortable setting out on that life. So I moved in with a family and took care of their child, and it was basically like living with mom and dad. But what it afforded me was a salary, a beautiful place to live, and time to audition and write. And I lived there for 2 years, but while I was there, I became very artistically frustrated with the audition scene. And I'm a person who always seeks out community. And I knew I needed something. And I had missed my choral days of high school. And I saw a sign up on the Columbia campus that said graduate a cappella group auditions. And I wrote an email to the group's leader, James Allen Ford, one of my transit collaborators. And I wrote this cold email to him that was like, hey, I'm not a grad student at Columbia. I'm an employee. Can I audition? I'm the right age. And he's like, I guess so. And so I auditioned for that a cappella group, did that for a year, made some of the best friends in my life. And it changed my life because James Allen at the time was in his first year of the BMI musical theater writing workshop with Kristen, and they were collaborating. And we kind of became bored of the Columbia University grad a cappella group, and we decided to break off and form our own super group of like the 4 best people in that group, plus Kristen, his friend. Wow. And so we kind of all gathered and we're like, hey, we're all actors and music makers, and let's have an a cappella group.
Yeah.
And so how it started was we just started gigging around town doing covers of Madonna songs, Peter Gabriel songs, like you do. And a cappella at the time was so nerdy. It was just still like, it wasn't what it is now. Nobody liked a cappella except the people singing a cappella. That's still maybe true, which is fascinating study in the in-transit audience. But, you know, it's like a cappella at the time was really like, it's what you do in college. Yeah. You know, and we were post-college trying to just get that magic back. Yeah. And so we were having a great time doing it, sort of becoming really great friends. But at the time, Kristen had started dating Bobby Lopez. He was writing Avenue Q with Jeff Marks. There was just a lot going on that really excited me. And I really felt like I belonged with this group of people and the art they were creating. And as an a cappella group, we became bored with singing covers of songs and just started to write our own songs. And so eventually we had enough original songs to do in cabaret. We had a song cycle basically about life in New York, our own lives on the subway. That was sort of the through line of it. And we opened at the Duplex in February of 2002. Okay. A little show called Along the Way. And I think 4 or 5 of those songs made it into the Broadway show in transit. I mean, in 2002, we just started writing this thing, and in 2016, it opened on Broadway.
Would you guys
that's the short story.
No, I know. This is like, that. I mean, I have so many questions about it.
Yes.
You did, so when you were doing the a cappella group,
right.
You guys would you all just sit around a piano together and like spitball?
Yeah.
That's how all of them
ways.
created?
I mean, all different ways. The songs were, some of them were created like that, like a vocal jam.
Yeah.
One of us would bring in a lyric and then we'd be like, hey, here's a chord, let's jam this.
All right.
You know, and sometimes that would happen. Sometimes we'd break into smaller groups a lot and say, these two are going to do music and lyrics for a song based on this idea, go. But at the time, they were all autobiographical comedy songs. But I felt like we were the first people that I knew of that were doing this thing, combining theater and a cappella. And Kristen and James Allen had sort of played with that as a concept for their end of the year BMI second year project, which at the end of, or their first year project, I'm sorry. At the end of your first year of the BMI workshop, you write a 10-minute musical. And they had written a 10-minute a cappella musical starring our a cappella group. And it was called Oedipus a cappella. It's really great. I can get you the CD. Yes. It's a gem. I played Yocasta. I had red plastic pants. It was a whole thing. But it was the first time that we took note that audiences really enjoyed this random musical comedy mashup of a cappella and theater. So that really inspired the idea for our a cappella group to make a larger piece.
Yeah.
But for me, I was I still identified very much as a performer who enjoyed writing on the side, but through what became In Transit, I loved the writing more, and my performing career kind of got less and less and less as my writing career got more and more, and I wanted to do that more. So
Yeah.
I still would love to be performing. I really still identify as a performer in my mind and in my shower. But I'm very, very grateful to be doing what I'm doing, especially as a mom. It's a much more stay-at-home friendly job, so I can be around for my daughter, even though I'm traveling today for work.
You
it
are.
happens.
And going right towards a weather pattern that's
Yes, I'm going
less than great. Okay, all right. So I have a few questions here. When did you guys decide to take the a cappella group and be like, hey, let's make a book musical? A. B. When did it, in your opinion, build the steam that it needed to like go all the way to Broadway?
Sure. I mean, we never set out to make a book musical in the beginning, and we also never set out to make a Broadway show. We set out to make a song cycle first, an evening, a cabaret. But we knew there was something very special in that cabaret and the way people were responding to our original story songs. And the bigger the story, the more intense the characters were, people were responding more and more. So after we did the show at the Duplex, we weren't sure what we wanted to do with it, but enough people kept saying, keep going. And we were having so much fun, frankly. Like, In Transit was built on a lot of fun and friendship. Yeah. It became why we hung out. You know, it became the thing, well, we have to all spend 3 days a week with each other because we're writing a show. You know, so it's like the friendship and the show were really one and the same. And it was such a wonderful time. None of us were married yet. None of us had kids yet. It was just a wonderful time of supporting one another in what can be a really difficult time for people post-college when they come to New York. And
So true.
I also feel very lucky because Bobby was having some good success with Avenue Q. We sort of saw that show going off Broadway. And so we were really buoyed by that.
Yeah.
You know, we were like, well, if he can do it, we can do it. Which is a really naive thought. But that's what you do when you're in your 20s. You have naive thoughts and
It's
you
a
keep
good quality,
going.
though.
You
Yeah.
know, we just felt so positive about it. And it was such a pure idea. But at some point we didn't know what to do next. And so we decided to apply for the Fringe Festival. But we knew we needed to make it like more of a musical. So we wrote our first book.
Okay.
We kind of like did a better job of stringing the songs together. I should mention here that I don't recommend this as a way to write a great book musical. Like this process, a little bit I mean, it's kind of like how they're building a lot of jukebox musicals. It's like you've got these great songs that get a great response from
Let's
people
make a
in
story.
concert setting.
Yeah.
Let's make a story, but that's a tough road. And
It
things
is.
that go over like gangbusters in concert fall flat in its face as someone's I Am song, which you learn off Broadway in previews, you know?
Yeah.
And they're hard to let go of these beloved songs that people loved for years and years. But so we made a book, our first book for the Fringe, and we always wrote in a crazy way too. We wrote like a Hollywood writer's room. We wrote Best Idea Wins all in a room together.
That's great.
Which is also not the suggested way to write a musical.
A sitcom. But
It's like a sitcom, right? But that's how we were having fun, and
Yeah.
it's just how we were doing it. So the Broadway credit for In Transit is book, music, and lyrics by all of us.
Yeah.
Even though we know the divisions of certain songs, but we also decided at some point we're all going to take an equal financial share in this because that's going to keep the collaborative process pure. And if a song ends up on the Today Show, we won't say, hey, I'm so jealous because you just got a couple $100 today. And I didn't write that one, but I wrote In Transit. You know, it's just, I feel also very lucky that we had such a great friendship and a great collaboration the whole time. I mean, for all of 16 years.
Wow.
You
Did
know?
you guys shop it around per se?
So
or
we
was
did.
it very organic?
Well, so after the Fringe Festival, then we really were excited about, you know, we got good reviews in the Fringe, and we had a couple of producers come to see it that were like, it's cute, you know, people just kept saying, keep going. You know, no one at that point was committing to us to do much of anything. Occasionally, like someone who called themselves a producer would come along, then we'd hang with them for a while and then realize, oh, we don't want to give away points of our show and make changes that we don't believe in. So then they wouldn't be our quote unquote producer anymore.
Yeah.
So basically we self-produced the show for about 8 years. We just did it anywhere we could. We entered any festival we could. And while all of this is going on, all of us were building other careers and getting married and having children. All of this was life was happening around us, but In Transit was always the thing we came back to because one of us always believed in it at any given time.
Right.
Which was a gift. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll speed this story up. Sorry, I'm going to jump a bunch of years now. We got into the Eugene O'Neill National Music Theater Conference in 2008, and that was a huge turning point for us. Okay. And that was also the point at which they said, by the way, don't perform the show anymore. If you want the show to grow, because we were performing it. It was written for us, about us. We were performing it. And Paulette Haupt, the artistic director of the O'Neill, said, if you really want this show to grow, we're going to get you a bunch of equity actors, and you're going to sit back and be the writers. Which everyone was all too happy to do, frankly, except for me. That was a real heartbreak because I was like, everyone's saying, if you're frustrated as a performer, write your own stuff. And I reached a point where I was told to not play myself. And so I think that's always been very interesting for me, that process. And at times it was really heartbreaking. And times I'm like, this is the best thing that ever happened to me because I became a real writer. Yeah. And I also have a very special relationship with Erin Mackey, who played Allie on Broadway, which was the original character that was based on my own story. And she's like a sister. She's like a very, it's a kooky kind of musical theater little twin.
That's so great. No, it's so interesting. So for instance, with auditions and when you have these people come in, because I was watching some about a chorus line a month or two ago, and it's so interesting because the original cast, it's about each of them. It's about their stories. Yeah. So when someone comes in and auditions, it's not like someone playing me; it's someone who is me that I want.
I mean, by the time we got off Broadway, which was 2010, and then Broadway, 6 years after that, the characters had changed so much. Right. They became amalgamations of Kristen and I were both temps at the time, Russ too, frankly. So, the character of Jane was mostly Kristen, but had pieces of my story, pieces of Russ's story. So then it actually became easier and the writing got better then. It was if I don't have to think this is me, what could this character do?
Anything.
So anything. No, exactly. Really anything. And they should, because we have this great teacher and the person who runs the BMI workshop, Pat Cook, and I always hear his voice in my head, and he's like, "You are not interesting enough. Don't write about yourself."
Shoot.
So it's like, what might a character do if they're not you? Yeah. So over the years, we became untethered in a way that was good, but there were still, there would be nights when I would be sitting in a Broadway theater, watching this show, watching Erin Mackey sing this song about my 20-something self, and think, I'm living a very strange life.
Very strange.
A very awesome, strange, bizarro life. And it's wonderful. Yeah. And it's wonderful. And then sometimes it would make me cry, and in a good way.
Yeah.
It was really wild. It was a really wild experience.
Was it almost like a dreamlike state?
Yep.
That's so cool.
And I felt grateful every minute. Even in the parts that were frustrating about Broadway, and we were in a very tough season. We ran about 5 months, and I'm so thankful for every minute of it, but it was tough. It was really, really hard to both keep up with that schedule, keep up with the demands of it. Just all of it was tough, and parts of the show that I still would love to change, and you just run out of time. Yeah. Or that in retrospect you think, oh, I wish we could have done this. Just so many pieces of that. I'm very proud of the show, and I'm very excited to see it get out into the world, which is happening later this year.
That's
getting
exciting.
Published and licensed, and I can't wait to go see every high school doing In Transit.
Oh, that's gonna be so
and
cool.
So I'm so excited about that show, but mostly because it is this story of an enduring friendship. Like the behind the scenes story for me is so satisfying, and I feel very sentimental about it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it'll always have you in it. What is no? It's just so that's so cool. What's the easiest part of writing? Is there an easy part? Is there
collaborating for me?
Okay.
I love collaborating.
Yeah.
And I think you're about to ask what's the hardest part. And so this is the answer relates to each other. The hardest part for me about writing, The part that I don't like, which I have to do at some point in every process, is sitting by myself with my computer. I'll do it, but man, I much prefer a trusted collaborator in the room with me and like making art together. That's why I like musicals. You know, at some point, a lot of people in the room.
It has to.
You know, that for me is the easiest part because I love people and I love best idea wins.
That's interesting.
You know, I love, especially when you're building comedy, I just love topping each other with jokes. I just love working with like-minded collaborators.
Yeah, when you guys would collaborate, would you record the session or would you just be taking vicious notes?
We'd often record like if we had a song riff we liked or something like that, but not really. We just mostly, you know, took a lot of notes and, you know, it's just pages and pages and pages of failed attempts of scripts and scores. And there were so many songs written for the show over the years and, lots of materials, lots of paper.
That's so cool.
Mostly.
Do you set goals?
Yeah, but I try not to beat myself up.
Yeah.
I'm a very schedule-oriented person.
Okay.
But I also have learned to allow possibility.
Yeah.
You know, to allow surprises to happen to me, to be open to things. It's funny because I came to theater as a performer, writing wasn't the thing I was going to die if I didn't do. Now it kind of is, but it never was. So I felt like I was able to take things as they come more and not feel the disappointments of it as much. Whereas my performing failures or perceived failures felt so much more like failures than my writing failures ever do. And it's funny because I still feel that. I still feel like if I have a bad audition, I'm just, you know, somebody bring me the Ben and Jerry's. But as a writer, I'm like, oh, well, they didn't like what I have to offer.
That's so, yeah.
And so as a result, I've been able to do better and not have to set those kind of goals. But as a performer, it's just such deep-seated desire to do it. And I've had so much rejection in it that it just hurts so much more.
No, there's less pressure too.
Yeah.
Because you're not, I mean, with writing, it's like you write it.
Yeah.
You know
So
what
I would say, like, to
care
answer
about
your
it.
question, do I set goals? I not really in my writing. I have things that like, oh, I'd like to now do this kind of thing. I'd like to try that kind of thing. But I'm just really open to what could happen.
Yeah.
You know, and I've also really tried not to say, and I want to make more money. I feel like the minute you do that, and everybody wants to make more money. Everybody wants to support themselves and make more money. But I feel very fortunate because my parents gave me the great gift when I was first out of school of every time I would call them and say, oh, I got this Fringe Festival show or I got this thing. Their first question was never, how much are you making? And I find that a lot of parents especially do that to young artists. And it just sits with you that you equate your worth with how much you make. And I always remember that as that's probably why I'm still doing it because nobody ever said to me, but you have to make money doing this. And as long as I could like support myself and survive and eat, I felt like keep going, you know? So I think now that I've had a little more success, the danger is saying, but I'm not being paid enough for that job. You know, when you get indignant, I'm worth more than that. And then I stop myself and I say, yes, I would like to have nicer shoes or whatever it is, or buy, you know, usually it's buy more things for my daughter or, you know, the things that we all love to have. I try to stop myself because I think that is the enemy of making good art.
It is.
You know, even though we should be paid well for what we do and appreciate it. That's the flip side of that coin. But so I try never to set the goal of I'd like to make more money, even though I sometimes do.
Yeah. No, it's such a like time and money. They don't go together with art.
Oh,
it's not.
It's so tricky. And yet artists are really undervalued, you know, but yeah.
That's so interesting. Do you have a favorite book or libretto of a play or musical that stands out in your mind? One that you particularly favor?
You know, it's funny you brought up A Chorus Line because I did a production of A Chorus Line as an actor when I was in college. And I devoured everything I could about it. And I was so taken by the way that book was made because it was inspired by original stories. And it's such like, it's also not a model for writing a musical. It's a very nonlinear, you know, it's not a traditional book structure, but it was very influential to me. I mean, it's evident in the work of In Transit. You know, I really love A Chorus Line. I really love the book to Avenue Q.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because I sort of watched the development of Avenue Q, and it was amazing to me the first time I heard Jeff Whitty's book in connection with Jeff and Bobby's amazing songs, many of which existed before Jeff Whitty joined the project. And I was just floored by how the book and the songs matched up and made this hilarious, heartwarming thing. It was very inspiring to me at the time and still is, you know. And I love, you know, traditional R&H. I mean, you know, those books are just models for musical theater writers.
They really are. And
You know?
I would say like it's like the Citizen Kane of like
Yeah.
screenwriting.
Yeah.
It's like
I
you
mean,
just look at it.
You know, I love Hello Dolly. Like
Yeah.
Hello Dolly is like my favorite classic musical. You know, I love Oklahoma. I love The King and I. You know, I mean, these are great models, but I also recognize that, you know, Hamilton has an amazing book and there's little to no spoken lines in it. So when I think about the book of a musical isn't just the dialogue, you know?
Oh no, not at all.
So it's I'm excited to see where musical theater continues to evolve and how the book writer, what part they play in that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I'm always so interested. Is there like a secret recipe or something to creating a perfect musical or a great musical? I think the answer is no.
Well, I will tell you what, I'm fascinated by the success of Hamilton. I think the key ingredient, besides all of the brilliance that was occurring there,
Yeah.
is that entire team worked together on In the Heights. The core team had done one before. And I feel like, you know, artist communities, we don't really work this way anymore, where it's like same director, same music director, same arranger, same choreographer, same writing team. If you can learn from what you did before and already have this common vocabulary, to me, that's a recipe for success. It's not going to get worse.
No. No, you won't. No, it won't. That's so true. Yeah, because then you can save so much time.
I
mean,
don't,
communication,
you know,
everything.
I wish on every star that the In Transit team could get back together and do a next show. I don't think it's going to happen for a lot of reasons of just like life and where we all are.
Right.
But man, we've learned a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I do write with Russ Kaplan a lot, one of the In Transit collaborators, and he's always my preferred, you know, if somebody's like, who do you want to write a song with? Immediately I say, Russ, we've been writing together for 14 years.
Yeah.
It's like we have a shorthand. And we will learn from our mistakes.
Right.
You know, so I think if there's a recipe for success of a musical, I think it has to do with working with the same people.
The same people.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone on taking risks in this community, in this profession of arts?
I did a lot of reading of Julia Cameron. Do you know Julia Cameron? She wrote The Artist's Way. She writes a lot about the artistic process. And she has this great passage that I keep taped up in my little walk-in closet. It's a disaster, but I keep a passage of hers taped up, so I look at it every day. And there's this bit in her book that says, you know, somebody came to me saying, I'd love to learn to paint, but do you know how old I'll be by the time I do? And she says, the same age you would be if you didn't, so get started. And I always think, like, what do you have to lose? You know, like, you're going to be the same age.
So true.
Time is going to keep going. So do it. You know? And I mean, I'm a very calculated risk taker in terms of my family and my, you know, my morals. I'm not a very adventurous person, you know, I think. But when it comes to the arts, I'm just like, if you can eat, if you can not hurt the people around you, keep going. If it fills you.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's interesting you bring up calculated risk taking, because I notice some of the most successful people are, you know, like even people who start their own businesses had a day job until they couldn't do the day job anymore because the new project was taking over their life.
Yep.
You know, very few people will just like, you know, drop everything and like pray.
Yeah, I mean, that's another Julia
getting it
Cameron
done.
is leap and the net will appear. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if I agree with that entirely, like if you have to pay your rent that month, but there is something in it that's, I think it's important to take risks. For a period of time, I had worked as a bookkeeper as a day job, and I became very good at like figuring finances and surviving in New York. And I was teaching this course to college kids about New York survival skills. But the course sort of became all about self-worth and how you spend your money related to your art and how you value your time. And I just feel like these are important conversations to have, and you have to take risks if you're going to create art. You just have to, and you're going to get rejected.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable. You're going to get rejected.
Yeah.
Do
Do you have any mistakes you've made that have proved essential in learning?
Yeah, I'm only pausing because there's been so many. Which one shall I bring up?
Where to begin?
Where to begin with all of my mistakes?
What taught you the biggest lesson?
I think that being hard on myself. So I think this happens to type A people a lot. I'm sorry that I was really hard on my younger self. But all of that plays into how you are as a writer, how you are as a person.
It's a fine balance.
Yeah, I'm, every day I feel like I wake up and try to look at the whole life as a piece of pie. None of us have enough time. Look at the pie of life. And I'm really trying my best to be a good friend to people. And that's what, as a mom, I know where my priorities are. Like I'm there for my daughter. I'm there for my husband. I'm there for my work. I try to exercise several times a week. I'm trying to do all these things, maintain the balance. And sometimes someone will send me an email and I won't respond to it, not because I don't want to, but because I want the time to respond. And let's just say I'm working on it, and that's where I'm like, I want to be as I get older. And I could do this when I was younger better because I didn't have all these other demands of life. But we have to really nurture our community and our friendships. And I really feel like times that I haven't given that enough attention, I'm sorry about. And I really want to do better.
How do you do better?
I don't know. I think it's
Because this is such an interesting point you're bringing up. So I'm curious, like, what's your secret, Sara Wordsworth?
Well, I don't have one.
Or what are
I
you
don't
figuring
know.
out? Like,
I
what
don't
have you
know.
figured out thus far?
I think one of the things to do, which is hard, again, type A, perfectionist, I admit I'm those things. I think for me, it's admitting to people my shortcomings and saying, I am so sorry. I really failed at getting back to you this week. And I'm truly sorry about it. And I know you might be really mad about that with me. And I'm just admitting I'm trying to find a better balance. Help me.
Yeah. And being genuine. Yeah.
And just trying to,
Okay.
Yeah. So I am working on that.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like my relationships are down the tubes. I feel like I have a wonderful community, but I am very conscious that it is a hugely important part. And I recently, sadly, lost a friend who passed away from cancer early in September. And the loss hit me like a ton of bricks. It was the first friend I'd lost. And it really floored me, the loss that I feel over this friendship with this woman. It's really opened my eyes since, it's been about 6 weeks, and it has really opened my eyes to, I'm going to do better with my friends. It's really important. And, I tell all these stories about in my 20s, and all these people, and it shapes your life. And I'm just so, especially these female friendships are so important for us women as we navigate this very difficult political terrain we don't need to go into. It's very depressing. But I am, and women helping women and inspiring others. And I'm just very interested in continuing to nurture the friendships I have and open myself up to the ones I haven't met yet.
Yeah. Do you have any mentors?
Yes. Well, I mean, I keep bringing them up, but I would say Kristen and Bobby Lopez for me
It's your collaborators.
have been so important, so giving, so generous of their friendship, of their time, of their daughter's hand-me-down clothing to my daughter.
It's the little things, the
You
big
know,
things.
I make a joke about that, but they are the most generous and kind people, both in life and in business. And it's funny because when Avenue Q opened off Broadway, a bunch of us were there. And I remember just seconds before the show was going to begin, I remember thinking to myself, I can't believe I know someone that wrote an off-Broadway show. I was like, all my dreams have come true. This is so exciting. And so it's been a sort of a long-term inspiring friendship, to say the least.
Yeah.
And I feel so lucky that I've been able to adapt their work. That's been fascinating and wonderful, and watching all of that happen. But they are mentors as writers. They are terrific, terrific artists that keep going forward and making terrific material. And so they've been great mentors. And their friendship in my life is no small thing. I also admire the heck out of Lynn Ahrens. And besides being an economical, incredible lyricist, she is about the nicest person. And she is lovely. She's just lovely. And I just want to work with people. And if somebody says, how did you like working with Sarah? It'd be great if they were like, she's lovely.
Yeah.
It's just like, I just admire Lynn Ahrens so much for her presence. She's also very generous. They're my heroes.
I noticed that too with a lot, and I've heard this about like Lin-Manuel too. Just kind and generous.
Yeah.
And it's the same two words all the time.
Yeah.
And then I find myself using those words to describe people that I mean, like those are
I know
the
it.
ones.
I keep repeating the word grateful, thankful, but it's true. It's
I know.
Like
it becomes like a trigger word or like a typical, but it's the meaning behind it though is so like, because we're breaking down why.
Yeah.
Why they're kind, not just like, oh, they're
Well,
kind
and it
generous
inspires you
and
to keep
authentic.
going.
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, you can do well in this business and be nice. And be generous. And I think I can't believe I keep bringing up Julie Cameron. Read her books. They're great. Yeah. But there's also this thing. I read her passages all the time because they keep me going as an artist. And it's like, she also talks about jealousy. I love this. The jealousy map. That jealousy is not something you should be ashamed of. It's a map of where you want to go. And if you think of it as this map, if you hear of your friends' successes or other successes and you feel, oh, why didn't that happen to me? It's a map of where you'd like to be. And she also talks about there's not one job. You think there is. Like I couldn't have dreamed up these jobs I have. And you hear of somebody getting something and you're like, but that was the perfect thing for me. I will never be as good. I will never.
Yeah. Or I'll be
that.
happy when I get it. Like if I
Right.
got that, that would be it. That's all I need.
And then sometimes life gives you something you couldn't imagine beyond your wildest dreams.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all of that.
I love that.
But there's not a finite amount of jobs. There really isn't. We think there is, but there really isn't. The universe is very expansive. Mm-hmm. And I always say I like to stay in New York because it's a place where you don't know what's coming. You don't know. Your life can change in like 24 hours.
Yeah.
In New York City, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
But you could get a call. It's like, by the way, you just got this audition and it changes your life.
I've had that thought
Such
so
a
many
cool
times
way to live.
in the subway, even like in the subway car, like who's in there? But even like, not like who's who of who's who, but I just mean like all the people in all the places from all around the world in New York City. So
Yep.
that's so cool. I have a left field question for you. If we're going to rewind a little, we're doing a little hopping around here. I'm curious about GMA and the Gayle King show, because I know you did a little stint in there with them for a period of time. Mm-hmm. How did that come about? What was that memorable moments, good, bad, otherwise?
So when I was in college as a theater major, my senior year, I started to panic about how I was going to support myself. And because I sort of did writing on the side, I thought, I should do like some internships or try to get some experience in other fields besides theater. And I was at Fordham at Lincoln Center, which is just a couple of blocks away from ABC. And they had an internship posted for the writer's assistant. So writer's intern for Good Morning America. And I applied for it and I got it. And I spent, 6 months or whatever as an intern over there, which was really interesting to me. It taught me that I don't want to write for Good Morning America. I have one of my best friends writes for Good Morning America.
Oh, really?
And I love her. And she's fantastic. But not that I wouldn't appreciate that job, but it taught me how much I love theater as opposed to the news cycle.
Yeah.
And I love watching
news
those
cycle.
shows. You know what I mean? But
Yes.
I really, it clarified that, writing has different things to write.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm skilled in journalism. Yeah, I think that's what it did for me, is that it just helped me focus. But it's so funny because I'm a very early morning person, and I think I got the job because I was the only person in college, the only college student willing to wake up and be on set by like 5 a.m.
Oh my lord.
All my friends thought I was nuts.
Yeah, it's early.
Yeah, it was early, but I loved it. I was in a TV studio, but the funny thing is, the best day of my life there was when Stephen Schwartz was the guest.
No way.
And I was so excited. So I was like, oh, well, there's a clue. Clearly, like, I'm not going to leave. And I was like, oh my God, Stephen Schwartz is here. Stephen Schwartz is here. And I met Stephen Schwartz,
Yeah.
So I had a great little stint at Good Morning America. And I can't even remember how it happened, but at the time, Gayle King was doing a Oprah-style talk show. And somebody from Good Morning America, one of the writers, recommended me, because I was also an actor, they knew that, to be an undercover reporter for her on a couple of episodes. I wore a little wire thing. And so that was a fluke, and it was
That's cool.
super fun. Yeah.
Well, can we
it was
expand on
super
that for a
fun.
second?
Yeah.
What was the undercover reporting?
I can't remember. It was a holiday segment of some sort, and I was wired. There was a camera in my glasses, and I know what it was. How to get a bargain. So I had a shopping coach in my ear, and I was going into stores and trying to haggle prices for things in the holiday season. Like, I love this gold watch. And then the little coach in my ear would say, offer this, offer this. So I did that.
Did you succeed?
It's very,
in
every time.
and everything?
Every time.
That's
So it was,
so cool.
it was not a long stint, but
No,
but again, I was sort of testing the waters on being a reporter, being a journalist. I was just trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I had all these interests, and I just wasn't sure.
Yeah. And it's also so important to find out what you don't want to do, because that really leads you to what you do want to do.
Absolutely.
That's really
Yeah. So
that's really smart.
yeah, so I had an internship.
When do you do most of your writing?
I
That's a loaded
sigh.
question. Sorry. Okay, next question.
No, I'm going to
What's
answer that because I think it's important. If there's any moms out there. So that answer changed dramatically when I had my child almost 6 years ago. Yeah, I think that everybody thinks they're going to fall off a cliff when they have a baby, which is why a lot of performers, a lot of arts people wait, or they don't do it. And I was very afraid of that myself. I thought, I'm just going to sink into oblivion and not be able to do anything, because I knew I'd had enough friends that had kids to know the demands of that. And we, don't have tons of money for nannies and things like that. I knew that I would be a stay-at-home mom or
It's a
a
different
working
life.
stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
And so I was very afraid. And the truth of the matter for me is that my career only grew after I had my child, because I learned that I don't need the perfect conditions to write. Whereas I would schedule it, I would sit down for 3 hours and I would think about it and brew my coffee and, what am I going to write about today? And it's going to be a great writing session. And now I'm like, I've got a napkin in my purse that may or may not have peanut butter on it, but I thought of something, so I'm going to put it on that napkin.
Because Scene 7, Act 2 needs to get done today.
And then maybe tonight after bedtime, I will transfer that napkin into my computer and I'll write for 10 minutes. I mean, it literally, my life is that now.
Wow.
But as a result, I write anywhere. I write anytime. I did give myself the gift this year of a new laptop, and I went into, this is a plug for my buddy Mike's store, Mike's Tech Shop, Apple Repair and Sales. It's amazing.
Where is it?
It is 20th Street.
Okay.
20th Street.
All right.
I gave myself the gift of the lightest model they have, the lightest, smallest, and pink computer that they had, so that I could write anywhere, anytime. If it's in my purse, it's not a big deal to carry around town.
Yeah.
And so that has also really helped me, because now my daughter's in school full time. And so I do drop off, I'm doing pickup.
Yeah.
You know, my husband and I are juggling all of that. So I can take the literal 20 minutes that I have and get something done.
What program do you use?
You know?
Is there a program in particular?
I mean, I mostly write in Word, but I
Okay.
write with styles.
Okay.
I write with style. You know, like I've got my musical theater keyboard shortcuts, you know,
Okay.
character and
Yeah.
stage direction and lyrics and all of that. So I've set up my own styles. I still find Word to be the most, you know, my favorite program to write in. But I'm working on Final Draft. I've had a
Okay.
few jobs recently where it's like, okay, it's time for Final Draft. Final Draft is wonderful,
Yeah.
but I'm just very old school in that way.
Do you ever sit down and handwrite, or is it all laptop for you? I mean, besides like the napkin, like the ideas.
You know, I used to bulletin board a lot by hand, like the note cards and the story bulletin board. To be honest, I don't write much anymore, handwriting, besides little notes I think of here and there. And this is so silly, but it's how it works for me. Yeah. If I see it in musical theater format, it's a song. If I see it on the page or on the screen, you know, it's indented 2 inches and it's all capital letters and it's in Courier font. It's a lyric.
It's a song. Yeah.
That's just the way my brain works. You know, so whereas when I handwrite stuff, I'm like, was that dialogue or was that, you know, so my brain works
now
really
I see what you're saying.
quickly.
Got it. Okay.
With format on a page.
Yes.
And not that I think all good writers come up with ideas and jot them down, but I do that less and less. And there's something in it for me about the legitimacy of it looks like a printed script that somebody's going to read or somebody's going to set to music.
Yeah.
And I kind of do it that way. I'm always, you know, I run a lot and I dictate voice memos all the time. I think of ideas when I run and I'm always dictating that. But then when I get home, I type it in.
Interesting.
But strangely, I don't do a lot of hand writing when I write that much.
No, that makes total
You know?
sense with,
weird.
especially with musicals, because
Yeah.
of the song. You know, your ideas will make more sense because they actually have a different font.
And it's also, I don't think of things linearly. So it's like if I'm thinking of a show as a whole, I'm writing my ideas down as I think of them. And then the cut and paste feature of that is so important to me. You know, it's like, and also when I write a song, songs have structure. So if it's a song, an A, song, I might have already written an A and a B and maybe the last A, but I need to fill in something in the middle. I'll cut and paste the structure of the lyric I wrote before, but highlight it so I remember to go back and, I still have to write that verse. But sometimes you think of the last verse of the song, but I need to see the whole song and feel it so I can hand it to the composer and it becomes a full song, even though I know I need to replace verse 3 with the same structure as verse. Your mouth is agape.
I'm like, no, I
like,
literally
what?
just went into a trance. No, this is so interesting to me.
That's the way my brain.
No, because like this
the way my brain
information is
writes.
not common. You know what I mean? Like if you were to YouTube this is like, you know,
No.
your structures. Like
Yeah.
that's not. You wouldn't just find that on Google. So that's
Right.
why I'm like, I'm learning so much.
It's but it's how everybody writes in their own
You figure.
way.
Interesting.
But for me, I like to see the end goal. I like to see the structure of it. So I just often put gobbledygook on there, highlight it so I know to go back. But I'm like, this is the structure as a whole.
So you can
Yeah.
visually see it. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Visually. Yeah,
Okay.
I like it to look like a script.
Yeah. No, that's just so interesting. I mean, I have like nothing
And
to.
I'm just recently started writing a screenplay. And screenplay format is different. And that's why I'm using Final Draft. And I love how it looks. It just makes me excited.
It
I'm
looks
like,
so.
ooh, interior. You know, which we
that,
don't
like,
do in playwriting.
No.
Like, but when I make that little INT period, I'm like, I wrote a screenplay. You know, like it's something so silly about that.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's on the page. It gives me legitimacy. This is so silly.
What have you? Okay, so I mean, I know we're getting like right down to the end here, so I promise we're gonna wrap up. I'm just so curious. What have you learned from starting to write screenplays versus like librettos? There's a difference, or not so much.
Yeah, I don't know what I've learned yet because I'm so new to
Just
it.
literally new to it. Okay.
I've learned it's not the same
Yeah.
so
Okay.
far. But, you know, story is story.
Yeah,
You know, beginning, middle, and an end.
it's the truth.
You know, great characters, climax, all those things.
Wow.
But Yeah, I don't know yet. Ask me that question.
We're gonna do a part two. We're gonna have to do a part two maybe or
I don't
something.
know.
Chat about this again. I love it. Okay, I want to jump one more time and then we're gonna wrap up here. Now you've done vocals as well for some Disney projects. Curious, maybe you've already answered this. How did those come about?
How did those come about? So I'm a voice of a troll in the movie Frozen, and I did all the original development of Finding Nemo the musical, and then we made a cast album for that, even though we weren't the actual cast. Those came about through my buddies, through the Lopez's.
Doing a favor for a friend?
Calling friends that are very reliable and can sight read harmony.
That's the way it goes.
You know, I mean,
I love
that's the way it goes. It's I would love to tell you that I survived rigorous rounds of auditions for those things. But the truth is, when musicals are being made, you know the people you can call to make your demos. You just know that. You know the people that will read the music, that won't give you notes on your writing. That is a pet peeve of mine. When you're trying to record something or hear something, how it goes, and people are, actors come in, they're like, I have notes on this. I've got an idea. And you're like, I just need to hear, this is a draft. I need to hear as I did it so that I can form ideas. Point is, you come to know those people that you can call the day before, send them the sheet music. Next day, they're going to show up and give you what you want. And, again, I feel very fortunate, but being friends, I have a lot of songwriter friends, and we all help each other out. We help each other out in the early stages, those of us who also sing and read music. And so I've done a lot of demos for Kristen and Bobby. And when it came time to do the troll song in Frozen, they felt very strongly that they wanted to use New York actors on that song because there's a lot of little character-y stuff for that. Most of Frozen was done in LA, but the troll song was done in New York. And it was sort of an amalgamation of people. It was pulled together, some cast members of Book of Mormon, cast members of Kinky Boots, because Stephen Aremus was working on it as well. And he was over at Kinky Boots. And then a couple of friends thrown in for good measure.
Oh, that's so cool.
So it was super fun.
Yeah.
It was, and nobody knew Frozen was going to be Frozen.
No.
We didn't know. But when the lesson is, when given the opportunity, you always work with your friends.
Yeah.
You work with people you like, because there's no upside to not working with people you like.
So true.
I don't care I care what credits people have or what they can do, but it's like, you just want to work with nice people you like. So you call the same people,
That's it.
So my overall thought on that is like, genuine friendships breed work. Friendships with like-minded people who are creating. And it's not to say I've never gotten anything by the traditional path of auditioning or sending somebody my demos or my agent got me a job. But the greatest things I've gotten have been because of genuine friendship with people who were creating.
Yeah.
And you try to return that favor all the time.
What's your definition of success?
I try not to define success out of things I've gotten, but that I'm still trying.
Okay.
So if I'm still going after a dream, I feel like I've succeeded. New York is really hard. I've not lived in LA, but I imagine it's really hard too. But it's really hard to keep going. So for me, I always tried to say, I have succeeded if I'm still trying.
Yeah. What's your balance of achievement and fulfillment?
Oh, what do you mean?
Like how do you balance the two? Is what you achieve fulfill you? Are they come hand in hand now with writing? Is that kind of like feeding into success in being fulfilled? I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that. If not, that's fine.
Yeah, I would love to say I wouldn't work on something that doesn't feed my soul, but I think that's a lot. We try.
No, but that's the idea.
But
not do things for money.
I don't know. I feel content if I've created something that I believe in with people I like. Did that answer your question?
That sounds like success to me.
You get home from quote unquote work and feel fantastic.
Yeah.
If you've been able to do that. If it's like I do think it's important as a writer. I do want to put content out there that I believe in.
Yeah.
that I believe in the message, that I want my daughter to see, or I want, that I feel good about.
That's a great answer.
I don't want to write a musical for the NRA. Things like that. It's like, who does? Maybe somebody, I don't know.
But not you.
But not me. Not me.
Oh, I do. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're coming down to the end here. This has been such a great conversation.
So fun. We could talk even longer.
We really could go.
And longer.
We could go and go
We'll
and
do
go
part
and
two.
go. We should. What's and I usually end it here with a Billboard quote. Metaphorically speaking, if there's a word or a phrase you can put on a billboard for millions of people to see, does anything come to mind?
Community.
Why?
I
mean, you've explained that already.
Yeah,
I'm just
I
curious
love
if
collaborating.
there's-
I think it's the thing that keeps you going.
It is. Yeah.
Yep. I think it's the essential element to making great art.
It's community. I love it.
There's this great line in Frozen that I'm like quoting Frozen. But and I'm gonna paraphrase the line here, even though I should know this by heart. But it's like maybe somebody goes up to a mountain, wants to be alone, and Anna says nobody wants to be alone. And I think that I'm like, and as a writer, sometimes you are writing things alone as a performer, but I just love a group of people making something. And I think there's just such joy in that.
Yeah.
So I guess community would be my thing. We didn't delve into it too much, but I'm on the board of the steering committee of the BMI Musical Theater Writers Workshop, and that is a huge part in my life. I've been going there for since 2005, and it's a weekly practice of writing and teaching and a community that comes together, people creating musicals, and they're my people.
That's a big community.
They're my people. Yep.
Yeah.
And I feel like you need it. It's like spiritual chiropractic. I feel like the danger of art is when you're by yourself. It can get very insular. It can get very narcissistic. It can get very narrow in its point of view. And so I'm all about, and in my life, whenever I've been depressed, I'm like, oh, I just need more community.
Just need to talk to someone and it helps.
I just need a pal.
Oh, I love that.
Or my great husband who just came in. He's the best.
He
just like quietly walked through, most supportive person in my life. It's like, don't mind me. I know you're doing a podcast. He's the greatest.
Oh, I know. I can't wait to meet him now.
He'll emerge from the room. But I was like, when you come in, be very quiet. We're recording.
We didn't even hear it, so it's perfect.
He snuck right by.
Yes. Okay, we can find you at sarawordsworth.com.
You can, and maybe someday I'll update it regularly. But I have to get better at that.
Be honest. Yeah.
I'm on all the things, but I'm not great at all those social things. But I'm findable.
Sweet.
Yeah.
No, that's
you
good.
can find me.
Wow. This has been a wonderful conversation.
It's been so great.
Thanks for sitting down with me.
Thank you. This was fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sara Wordsworth.
You've been listening to Entertainment X, the podcast. You can follow Entertainment X on Instagram at _EntertainmentX_. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join Clay next week for another curiosity conversation on Entertainment X. Thank you for listening.